Did you know you can advertise on podcasts?
Don't act like you're not impressed.
Find out more at podvertise.com.au. That's podvertise with an s.com.au.
Hi everyone, it's John Van Wisse here, and I'm looking forward to being on the Unlaced podcast with the great man Jake.
John Van Wisse, welcome to the Unlaced podcast, mate.
Thanks, Jake, aka Ronaldo. Know what a soccer star you are.
No, not at all. You've been calling me Christian Ronaldo for years. I'm hoping it's just because we resemble the same looks as opposed to probably the same sporting talents. No, mate, pretty pumped to have you on. I must say, this is probably one of the first guests I've had on that I'm a little bit nervous because...
Really?
John Van Wisse, for those that don't know, and I do just want to give a bit of background on who you are before we get into the crux of the podcast, because not enough people know who John Van Wisse is, in my opinion, and more people need to, because he's one of Australia's, if not the world's, greatest ever triathletes, as your good mate Johnny Locko would say.
He's on though.
But you've got a pretty incredible CV of achievements, and I wanted to just name a couple straight off the bat. So you've been a world record holder of the Enduroman Arch event, which for those that don't know, and we're going to go into the details of this in the podcast, but it's a run, bike and swim from London to Paris. So let's just pause on that for a second. That's just insane. You're the fastest Australian to swim the English Channel. You've won the New Zealand Half Ironman, and you've won the New York to Manhattan Island Marathon 3 times, because one wasn't enough. And the lengths that you've taken your body to over the last 25 years, in a lot of people's eyes, would be inhumane, I think. And something I do want to get into the podcast today with you, I'm really interested in talking about, is, I guess, your mentality around challenge and hardship, and just further understand, I guess, what's driving you, because it's pretty crazy, some of the stuff you do. And I guess I wanted to just hand over to you a little bit at the start, maybe just to give a bit of background for some of the listeners who don't really know the John Van Wisse story, but keen to get a bit of a start on who you are for all the listeners out there.
Oh, don't know who I am. I'm just a guy who likes to do endurance sports, really. I'm not too good at sprinting, so I've got to go longer and longer to get anywhere. Unfortunately, I'd rather be...
Yeah, well, to say that the first time I met you, well, not one of the first times I met you, the one that stands out to me the most was actually I was training with our mutual friend, the Big Rig, down at Dendy Park, and he was putting me... Yeah, great man. Shout out to the Big Rig. He was putting me through my paces, trying to help me get back into fitness and soccer, and saw Johnny Van Wisse just running laps of Dendy Park on the grass area where the track is, and I'm like, what's he doing, Big Rig? And I'm like, you came past, and they're like, oh, Johnny, how you going? And said, oh, what are you doing here? He goes, oh, mate, I'm just having a rest day. I'm like, well, what, you're running though, and you're running barefoot on grass. You go, how far are you running? Oh, just going to do 10K and head home. And I thought, Jesus Christ, he's a different cat, John Van Wisse. A 10K rest day barefoot.
Thanks, mate.
So for those, as I've said, detailed a bit of Johnny's background and some of the level of achievements and levels that you've gone to, but to get a bit more understanding of you, and I know you're a pretty reserved character. You let your actions do the talking rather than your mouth. And but for me personally, I mean, I just want to know, like, what's your why behind everything you're doing? Like, why are you going to these lengths to challenge yourself?
Oh, it's a good question, Jakey. Probably initially, my sister's also a marathon swimmer, or was, and when she was probably 15, she won a race from Beaumaris to Frankston, which was 20 kilometres. And she only entered it. She was the state 100, 200, 400, 800 metre champion. And this event came up, and she thought she'd just enter it for the sake of it, see how she, a bit of a test. She beat the Australian champion. And I was actually paddling for her that day. I was only a little kid, maybe I was 10. And then through that, we met the Australian marathon coach, who ended up becoming my coach, Dick Campion, who's a great man. And someone I really looked up to. And my sister kicked on, and ended up, she was dating an Italian world champion, Sergio Cadendini, who he actually got second in the world champs. And she was going to Italy, doing all the circuit, the marathon races over there. And I was at school, and I hated school. And my dad was a real hard man, and I really needed an excuse to get out of school. So I said, look, I want to be a marathon swimmer. So I didn't realise how hard you had to train. So I started training with Dick Campion, who, like I said, I really respect. He was a British Olympian, Australian marathon coach, and we were doing like 120k a week in a 25-metre pool, which was like 12k in the morning, 8k at night, 6 days a week. So it was torturous. So I just kept striving and started winning a few races and travelled around Europe, had a real good time. I mean, you don't make much money, but it's more, at that age, you're just doing what you love. And,
how old were you when you were doing this?
I was probably 19, I reckon, 19, 20.
Okay.
A long time ago.
Mate, no, you're looking well. So when did you start training with Dick Campion? Was it in your early teens?
Yeah, 17. So I was always swimming and life saving, keeping fit. I mean, my dad was a hard man. He was a printer. He used to work long hours behind the machine, fund everything. So he, as long as we were, trying to achieve something, he was happy. So I just had to show, intent. And I actually, you start getting addicted to it. You beat somebody, you think, I could probably beat this person. And, makes you train harder. And then, so I had a fantastic coach with Dick Campion who really motivated me, through those massive sessions. He used to walk the length of the pool most of the time with his 2 stopwatches and have a whiteboard and write messages on there. Write the name of my rival and say, he's 10 metres in front of you, in the middle of the pool set. Silly things like that. So we got on really well. And then through that, I came back and Tammy and I, my sister Tammy, we wanted to be the first brother and sister swimming the English Channel. So this was 1993. So as a training session, we swam across Port Phillip Bay, which was Port Ellington and Frankston, which was a lot of people had tried to do it. So the record, I think, was 15 hours at the time through Linda McGill, our Olympic swimmer.
What's the distance? What's the distance for that?
40. Port Ellington and Frankston. So we did that probably in February as a training session, and it got massive exposure because we had Dawn Fraser on our boat. And
swimming icon.
Yeah, so because we had Dawn, we got huge publicity. We were like front page of the Herald Sun. I thought, how good's this? And I got the record, beat my sister, so I was happy. So we had a big rivalry going. And then probably 4 or 5 months later, we had our booking for the English Channel. So I swam through winter. I was a pretty skinny kid. I was 19 or 20 years old. Believe it or not, I had a six-pack back then. I was really proud of it. So I didn't want to lose my six-pack. But when you swim in cold water, you actually need a bit of body fat to sustain your warmth. Right. So the English Channel being, like when we got there, it was 13 degrees. They were having a real bad summer. So you get a week's window, and you have to choose a day in that week. And when we got there, it was gale force winds. We ended up having to go on a day where there were 4-6 winds and the water was 13 degrees. So we had a boat each and we raced across, and I was hoping to get the world record, which was 7 hours 40 at the time, as well as being the first brother and sister to get across.
Yeah.
So I took off and I had a good lead on the sister, and it was really rough. And I felt really good, and I thought, no matter what, I'm just going to keep charging. The cold won't get me. But it's kind of like when you're watching telly late at night and you think, watch the end of this movie, and you end up falling asleep and the telly's on in the morning. I just started falling asleep. So I ended up passing out, and they had to pull me into the boat. And quite a few people said they saved me, but I've given the credit because one's the most famous. So,
yeah.
So Dawn resuscitated me, and I woke up in one of those silver space blankets. So I didn't get across. I was off France. And my sister got across, and she did the fastest time for the year. And the fastest person for the year gets a Rolex watch with your name engraved on the back and the time and the date. So I thought, my sister's got across. She's got the fastest time, male or female. I look like an idiot. I didn't get across. I look like a weakling. But I was pretty mentally distraught because I thought I was, quite strong, and the fact you just feel helpless when that happens. But Dawn got in my ear and said, come on, let's go back the next year. Let's put on some weight. So I cut my training down to about 60K a week. So I practically halved my training and just started going on an eating frenzy. Like I would go to McDonald's and have like 5 Big Macs and things like that. So I would eat so I was uncomfortable. And I put on 23 kilos. And the next year we got there, it was a totally different country. The water was probably 16 degrees, 3 degrees warmer. It was like 20 degrees and sunny, light breeze. It was, and I actually got the Australian record. So I got across, I got the Australian record, but I got held up in the middle of the channel by a Russian oil tanker towing another one. Jesus. So I had to tread water for 12 minutes. Because normally the oil tankers, that sounds silly. Normally they adjust course for you. This time, because it was towing another one, it didn't adjust course, and I had to stop, and I'm getting all angry at the boat, and going, what are we stopping for? And he goes, you've got to stop or you're disqualified. And I wanted to keep swimming. I ended up missing the tide at the other side, and that cost me the world record. So I got the Australian record, and I was happy to get across, but then I started thinking, geez, I could have got the world record, and then I got sick of swimming because I was doing such big Ks, and then I did a total change and got into marathon running. So I did my first marathon, the Melbourne Marathon, probably in 1995, and I was running 200 plus K a week, and I got real skinny again, and I wasn't a bad runner. So I was actually at halfway. I was with the leaders. I was with a Japanese and a Kenyan. So I was halfway in under 1 hour 10. I did the first 10K in 30 minutes because all my mates were watching. So I basically ran as fast as I could for the first 10K.
Oh, no.
With 2 other people leading, getting on clear. I ended up blowing up, and I ran at 2:39. And at that time, I thought, oh, this is terrible, But now I look back and go, that wasn't a bad run.
It's pretty good.
I just
Jesus.
got carried away. So then I was trying to go for the Olympics. In my head, I was thinking, I'm going to make the Sydney Olympics in 2000 in the marathon running, but it just wasn't good enough. I couldn't get under the 2:20. You got to run a 2:07 to be competitive. So I was a bit delusional there. So, but I'm actually a swim coach, so I coach a lot of triathletes. Mm-hmm. So they were saying on the weekends I would do aquathons, which were swim runs for prize money, because basically living off a shoestring budget. And I'd win a few of those and beat some credentialed triathletes. So the people I was coaching just said, oh, you beat so-and-so, you should get on a bike. Because I started getting a bit thinking, I'm not going to make it in the running, I'm just not good enough. I then started jumping on a bike. I remember the first time I borrowed a bike off a friend who's now my dentist, and another guy who, were a bit older than me. So I thought, geez, I'll be able to outride these guys. And they took me down to the Edithvale velodrome, and these old guys were smashing me. And I'm thinking, what's going on? I can't ride a bike. Didn't realise it takes like 2 or 3 years of riding before you get good on the bike as well. So then I got into the Ironman triathlon, so I did that for a while and loved doing that. Obviously, basically, I was racing professionally, but I was still working, coaching, twice a day. And it was more the lifestyle. I just loved the challenge. It was something totally different. It was a new challenge. Then I eventually got sick of that, so I went back to marathon swimming and did the swim race around Manhattan Island, New York, which is an annual race, 47 kilometres around the whole island. You swim around the whole island anti-clockwise. Yeah. I won that 3 times, and I love that event because that was massive. You get an article in the New York Times, and it's just a huge event, and you get a lot of exposure doing that. So I did that for a few years, and I got sick of the swimming again, and then the Arch came up. So that's the one you were talking about initially, which is you start in the Marble Arch of London, and you run 140 kilometres to the English Channel. You then swim the English Channel. You then cycle from Calais to the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, which is 291 kilometres. So the event is called the Arch du Arc because you start in the Marble Arch of London and you finish in the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. So then I got back into the running again, and that's when you see me running the barefoot. Yeah. So so I thought, geez, I've got to have to learn how to run again. I started off. I did the first 50k training run, and I ended up walking home. I was running on Beach Road, and I got the sledgehammered legs. I'm thinking, how am I going 140k? And I got mates on the bike seeing me, walk home. It was embarrassing. So then I started doing a bit of research on marathon because I was trying all the different shoes, the real heavy long distance shoes. And it didn't matter what shoe I got. At about 50k, my legs just felt sledgehammered. So I started. I googled Yanis Kouros, who is a famous ultra marathon runner who used to win the Sydney to Melbourne.
Yeah.
And he basically had no science. He ran like a duck with his feet out. And he used to eat that Greek sweet bacala as his nutrition. He just basically meditated when he ran. He used to do poetry in his head. So I tried running like him with my feet out, and it didn't work for me. Then I found another guy, Dean Canassis, who was winning all the 100-kilometre trail runs in America. And he had this philosophy about minimalist shoes, which basically means you wear the lightest shoe you can. And he would walk around in his office barefoot with no chairs. And he would do barefoot running on grass to make his foot muscles strong. And then when he raced...
Explains you at Dendy Park then.
Yeah, so I started running during the week barefoot on the grass. And then the weekend I started doing Dendy runs in a racing flat, to Frankston and back. And I found I got real strong doing that. And then I started developing a shuffle style because I found, at 50k, your legs start coming lower and lower at the surface because they're so sore. So I thought, well, I'll try and start off with a low shuffle. So I'd practice that on the grass, trying to bring my foot through as low as I can. I remember one 70-kilometre run. I'd start at 3:30 in the morning on a Saturday morning. So I'd run from Brighton to Frankston and back. I was just past the sandy pub, and I'm doing that real low shuffle, and it's dark. And I tripped on a crack, fell over, had a real good song in my head, thinking, oh, how good am I? Nice song. Trip over. Next thing I know, I'm just, what am I doing on the concrete? Got to get up, blood all over my knee, my elbows. Still got to run to Frankston and back. So the problem with that shuffle style was, I had a few trips along the way, and it looked a bit goofy. It looked like, I was finishing my 70k run when I was starting. But I found that with the barefoot training was fantastic, and I started getting a real buzz out of doing my long runs and seeing how well I could do them. So when I did the Arch, I actually did the fastest run leg at the time. And I'm not built like a runner. I'm like no Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I'm still around 100 kilos. So technically I'm not built to be an endurance runner. And
that's what's amazing though, because like that run, what's it is 140 k's the run?
Yeah, it's brutal. It's hard to explain. You have to see it because when you go through London at the start, you get stuck at lights, and when you come to towns, you're stuck at lights, and you got to wait for people in front of you. They don't realise you're running 140k, and you're running on the back roads, and you've got like a headlamp, and you're running in the middle of the night on the opposite side of the road with potholes everywhere. And every now and then a car will come and flash the high beams, and then you've got to climb up to the nature strip, which is the nature strips along those roads are basically like half a metre grass prickles. You can't run on them. But then you've got to climb up the bank, let the car come past, climb back down, start running again, watch all the potholes. And there's like a 5-kilometre hill that you've got to go up. And when you get to Dover at the end, there's a 1-mile climb, which you can back up. It's a real brutal course. So it's not like running Beach Road. It's just, you're running through prickles, and you're running off the side of the road, and you've got people walking in front of you. You've got to stop for lights. You've got to try not to get lost through the towns. Yeah. You come down, and the guy who runs the event, great man, Edgar Edke, he'll say, okay, look, if I lose you, turn left at the McDonald's, right at the lights, left at the hospital, right there. And I'm just like, oh, jeez, I'm struggling to lift my legs.
Yeah, I can't think straight.
Extra motions like that, and people walking in front of you and stopping for cars. It's a real hard run. So
how do you because you mentioned when you're preparing for this event, or when you started, you went out and ran 50 k's and your legs were shot, and like 50 k's to the average person, like probably will never run that, and some people 50 k's will be the most they run ever, and that was your like starting point. So which is just crazy. But when you're running those like ultra distances or doing these ultra events that are, you're kind of, it's like a repetitive distance, or the time to complete it is so long. Like in your mind, what are you like? How are you talking in your mind? How are you pushing yourself through either the boredom or the pain or the exhaustion?
Oh, it's a real roller coaster, Jakey. Sometimes I was running on Beach Road, and because I do a lot of on the swim coach, so I've got a lot of my triathlete friends that are riding their bikes. So not at 3:30 in the morning, but kind of like 6 to onwards, you start getting people coming by, and I had a Facebook page, promoting what training I was doing, so I know when I'm going for a run, and they'd be giving me cheers. So that was fantastic when I was coming on the backwards part of Frankston, people giving you a cheer and that. But yeah, I basically had my AM/FM radio going. I'm a simple man. I'm just still using the AM/FM radio. And
can you show the listeners your phone that you use now, just to put in context the simple man? That is
pigeon carrier. So I'm a simple man. I just like doing my sport and keeping life simple. And yeah, but those runs, it's a roller coaster. Sometimes you feel good for a lot of it. Sometimes, you feel terrible, and you just got to. I would just think, okay, keep my stride really low, relax your shoulders, whatever's happening. Might stop and have a quick stretch, and then you might come good half an hour later. Sometimes you don't. You just don't know. You just hope.
Is that a thing with like some of these endurance events? Do you feel if you push through the hardship of certain points, it could be the first 10K, it could be the 50K, the 100K. Do you find that you do get a second wind and you actually like start to feel a bit better?
Oh yeah,
really?
Oh yeah. Oh, when I did the Arch event, I mean, it was very traumatic. What happened is basically, like I said, it's the same as English Channel. You get a week's window, and because we only booked it a year out, we had to book a really big tide, a big spring tide, which means the water's moving further. And that window we had, we were in the back of a hurricane from America. Yeah. So there were gale force winds. So everybody that was booked just to swim the channel, not to do the Arch, cancelled. Nobody even attempted to go out. Even the relay teams with 6 people, which do 1 hour each, didn't go out. So I got the all clear because I'd done a double crossing with the English Channel with the same boatman. So he gave me special permission to swim the channel, but I had to run 140k first to get there. And then I had to swim on a day where every solo swimmer, every relay team had cancelled. So it was a lot of drama, and I got lost going through London, so I ended up running an extra 4.9k. So I'd never run 140k. I got lost going through London. So I ended up running almost 145k. Swam on a day, where I was on a massive spring tide, wind against tide. So I ended up swimming 54k. So you think you're swimming a straight line, but because of the current, you're actually doing an S.
Well, that's the thing. Because that's what I was going to say. Because the swim's 33k's, isn't it? The English Channel or something of that nature.
So all the records are done with small tides and in good weather where you swim a straighter line, so the tide's not pushing you off course as much.
So the weather can really impact the outcome. Yeah.
Oh, the tip of France, Point Grenade, the boatman tries to land you on that. If the tide's really strong and you're not swimming quick enough and you miss that tip, you've got to swim a lot further. So I ended up missing that tip, and I ended up swimming 54k. And I could see this lighthouse because I finished, in the dark, and I just started sprinting towards this lighthouse, and I made a mistake because I had my earplugs in, and everyone on the boat screaming, "No, keep going straight." And I didn't listen, so I ended up the last 400 metres took me half an hour. I was sprinting for my life to get to these rocks.
Yeah.
And the boat, he parked the boat right next to me. He goes, "You've got 500 yards." and I was sprinting, and even 20 metres out, I wasn't sure I could get in because I was so tired because I'd run 145k, just before that. So when I finished the swim, I was a mess because I had to expend so much energy to get into the rocks. It was such a big tide.
There's this footage. I just wanted to speak about this because I wanted to speak about this event in a bit more in some detail, just for the listeners to understand, like the arc to arc, and you've kind of summed it up pretty well. But in between the run, swim, and bike, there is a period of rest, as in like you might stop up at a accommodation, put the feet up have a sleep, and then you get going. But you, it's pretty impressive. Like you, and I think your sister, Tammy, mentions it, that there's not many people that could run, 140Ks in under 16 hours and then 8 hours later front up for another 12 hours of punishment, which is the English Channel swim. Mm-hmm. And there's actually, I would recommend anyone listening to this podcast that wants to see, some imagery to the words Johnny's talking about. It's called Crossing the Line on YouTube, which was a documentary that the great man Brooksy developed in 2014 for the Enduroman event that you did. and it actually details what you're just about to talk about, which is after you finish the swim, your body was at the point of exhaustion. I think a couple of your team members literally had to carry you in the car, and your arms are just floppy, your legs aren't even really functioning, and your eyes are at the back of your head. It's almost like you've passed out.
It looked a lot worse than I felt.
It's just like extraordinary. Then you went and had a sleep, and it probably, if you look at that footage, you think he can't move, like he can't go again. This is ridiculous. And you guys, you get taken to accommodation, you get in a massage, you're having some food, you have a sleep, and all your team members go to bed. And I think forget his name, the guy who ran the Enduroman event. What was his name? Edgar. So he said that they've got a 12-hour window of rest. So within the 12 hours, he's got to go again if he wants to beat the world record. And everyone in your team's gone to bed. You've gone to bed. 6 hours later, the first person that wakes up is John Van Wisse, and he's going, "All right, let's go." And everyone else is going, "What? Like they're not ready. Johnny wants to go now. What? You don't want to rest?" And you're up again, and then you bike 290 k's. I mean, come on, Johnny, that's not normal.
Oh no, it's not a normal day or 60. It's not a normal 61 hours of your life. But yeah, basically, as you were saying, that I'll go from the beginning. So you backlog how long you'll think the run will take and how much rest you need. With the channel, you leave at the high tide. So I backlog 24 hours from the high tide, which means whatever I came in under 24 hours was my rest period, but the clock doesn't stop.
Right.
So I came in 15:52. So my rest period was from then to there. And then after you swim the channel, you have to start the bike within 12 hours, but the clock doesn't stop. So if I took 12 hours, that's 12 hours onto my total time. So
understood.
So I finished the swim and I was stuffed. It's kind of like when you're trying to sleep on, I'm not sure what you're like on an airplane, but I can't sleep properly on an airplane. It's kind of broken sleep.
No, neither.
So it was a contradiction. I was that exhausted that I couldn't sleep properly. I was like, getting cramps and pain. My throat was all swollen from the salt water. I was just in a lot of pain. I couldn't sleep, and because I was well ahead of the previous record and I'd come out of the water and I looked terrible, the crew said, well, let's give him the full legal 12 hours because he's going to get the record if he can finish the bike because he's got a good buffer. But like I said, I couldn't sleep properly anyway, so my crew, Big Johnny Locko, got me the best chicken soup I've ever had. That went down beautifully because I had the swollen throat.
Yeah.
I was getting broken sleep and I thought, I'm not going to feel any better, 4 hours later.
Yeah.
Might as well, once in a lifetime, hopefully I actually want to do it again, but I've just got to get going. The clock's not stopping. I'm functional. Let's go. So I had to get everybody up, and then we had to drive to the start. So you're losing time. So that's all part of it. The clock doesn't stop, so you've got to work out, how long you'll think the run will take. And if you stuff that calculation up, you've stuffed everything up. So the more aggressive you run to the swim, the riskier it is. Because you've got to bear in mind, it's not 140k, on a flat run. It's a brutal run.
Yeah, because you mentioned that with the run's not an easy run. The swim, depending on the weather, is not an easy swim. And then the bike isn't easy either. So you kind of, I think you say this in the documentary, like it's a fair race because there's no advantage for a good runner, a good swimmer, a good bike ride. All three legs are super tough. Yeah,
the ride's real hard. Like they take you to the back roads and they wouldn't actually tell us the schematics of the bike. So we had normal gearing and we still had the big headwinds from the hurricane. So there were like 10 massive climbs and I was creeping. I was, tired and I was creeping over these hills. So I rode a terrible time. So I looked at the previous times and thought, geez, these guys mustn't be very good bike rides. But now I know why. It's just a real hard bike course.
Yeah.
If I had my time again, I'd have, hill climbing gears, hopefully not the big headwinds. And so the whole thing was hard.
But, I mean, and this is what the documentary shows, is that as crazy as of a cycle it was, and I think there's a shot of you're almost like bike riding on the spot because the wind's blowing that hard and you're like, geez, this is tougher than I anticipated. You stop over at Macca's and have some nuggets because you need some like salt in your body. But you get there and it's nighttime in Paris and you're kind of riding through the lights of the road because it's like a stop and start. So you get to kind of take in the beauty of what Paris is. But you get the world record and all your team members are there with the little sort of banner for you to ride through, popping champagne, everyone's screaming, all the people in Paris around the Marble Arches are like running over, like, who the hell is this guy? And then I think Edgar just literally yells out, like, this bloke has literally just ran, swam, and biked from London to Paris, and he is the world record holder. Like, that must have been one of the most amazing moments, because you go back to when you were 19 and you were, you know, as thin as anything, trying to swim the English Channel and go against your sister, who, for those that don't know, was a pretty unreal swimmer and athlete. And I think you say in the documentary that you guys used to have to be split up in the swim squads because you used to just fight in the water because trying to beat each other. So you go from that, like, hardship of you not being able to complete the English Channel. Dawn Fraser's there, you're 19, you're like, fuck this, like, I've stuffed up, I've embarrassed myself, and then you've got the world record for doing, like, one of the biggest ultra triathlons the world has.
Yeah,
like, what was the feeling like for you then?
Oh, I mean, because I kind of knew probably a few hours to go that I was going to make it, and I was going to get the record, so I had a lot of time to chill out, and that was a great experience. And, you get stuck at all the lights going through Paris too. That's all part of it. So
yeah.
Lead car stops, you have to stop. So Edgar was my guide. He basically said we're following him, and then I had another car with my crew. Yeah. And I was having chats to Edgar, and Edgar's a fantastic man. He was the first man to actually do the event, and then he started the company Enduroman, which you booked the window for, and he organises the Arch Dark. So I was lucky to have him as my guide. So it was a real good bonding experience with Edgar. And Edgar really wanted me to get the record. He was so helpful, and gave me fantastic advice. So it was kind of good because I had time to chill out, and once I knew my body, I was going to finish. With a couple of hours to go.
Could just reflect and take it in.
Look around, and just try not to crash, do anything. I hope you don't get like that. And also a sense of relief, really, when you finish it. It really is, because a lot can go wrong. It's such a hard event. So it was a massive sense of relief too when I finished.
There's I do want to talk about some of the inspirations, and maybe just take it back to before the event, because you do talk about your late great father and the work he did to provide for you and Tammy to be able to actually go in these events and compete. Can you give us some background on who he was to you? Because I know he's in the documentary anyway, which I've watched, which I recommend, as I said earlier, that everyone do watch if you want to know more about John Van Wisse. But you talk about how inspiring and how critical he was into who you've become.
Well, I mean, my father was just a real hard man, so he didn't give you much. You had to earn everything. If somebody beat me, he'd be like, "Oh, why am I paying some fees? So and so beat you." So he was always putting up. And he was, like I said, he was working, behind a machine all day. And that's all. I couldn't do that. I'm not mentally tough enough to do that. Yeah. So I was, living the life, doing what I loved. Trying to get better at whatever sport I was doing at the time. And it was a great life, even though, like I said, you're living off breadcrumbs and things. I'll be working as well part time, trying to train as hard as I could. Basically, everything, your whole mentality revolves around how can I get better and faster and stronger. Yeah. So Dad used to fund a lot of our events, and he was obviously getting a kick out of that, but he wouldn't show it. But so I was always trying to impress him, and so I won this or I won that, or if I lost, I'd go hiding and
steer clear of his eye line.
Yeah, exactly. So he was family man.
That's and one thing you do mention as well is, like, when some of the events get tough, you kind of think of him behind the machine, don't you? Because it's like keeps you going.
Well, actually, when I left school, I did a printing course as well. Then I went overseas and raced. There's no way I could stand behind a machine all day. I'm not tough enough to do that. So I would go down the back sometimes and help him out, but I couldn't last an hour. I was like, let's get out of here. So you know what I mean? So
yeah, I don't think I'd last an hour.
I might not be making much, but I'm doing what I love. And he's massively. So I was very, very privileged, very lucky. So yeah.
For you, what do you think? And this is probably a question for everyone who's been listening in and knows a bit about you and your story and just the lengths that you're willing to take yourself. But what do you think the benefits are of pushing your body through that hardship?
Oh, don't know if there's any benefits.
Physically, but like,
No.
probably mentally though, right? There's got to be some sort of liberation or some sort of mental toughness that really sets you up in other areas of your life.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So I was never going to cure cancer. I'm not smart enough. So sport was my go, and I was just doing what I loved. And one thing led to the next. Like you start with with a small swim, and maybe when I say small, maybe a 10K swim, and then you think, oh, I can make 10K. Maybe I'll try 20. And then once you get on top, you think, oh, I'll try an English Channel. Like I didn't like I said earlier, I didn't finish my first English Channel, and then 20 years later, I did a double crossing in the English Channel. So had you told me, when I just woken up in the arms of Dawn Fraser that 20 years later you'd be doing a double crossing, I'd be going, oh, geez, it's a long way off that.
Yeah, no shit.
But one thing leads to the next. You learn from your mistakes, and that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger if you keep working at it. It's just been that you get a base of strength in one thing, and then I'd change sports. And then I'd go back to swimming, and I'd still got that big base there. So once I started getting on a roll, I felt good again. And then learning how to run long distances, with my barefoot stuff and my shuffling, and I found that real. I got a kick out of doing 70K, training runs. Not when the alarm went off at 3 a.m, but when I'd finished the run, I think, geez, I've run to Frankston and back. Then I'd have to work in the afternoon coaching.
There's a story, actually, I just want to talk about one of your 70K runs. There's a story that the day you decided you were going to do the Arc to Arc, which was actually New Year's Day, and I just want you to validate if this is true or not, because this is just a story I've heard, but apparently it was New Year's Day you decided, I'm going to do the Arc to Arc, and that day, then and there, you ran 70Ks, New Year's Day.
Oh, I had built. That's probably a bit of power on that.
That is mate. That's a Johnny Locko bit of mayo then, because I'm pretty sure it came from his mouth.
I'll go. No, I did some 50Ks first, and like I said, my first 50 was a shocker.
Right.
I got the sledgehammered legs, and I thought, geez, I can't run 50K. I got to run 140.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I was on Beach Road, so all my mates could see me, walking, and it's kind of embarrassing. So then I experimented with I spent a fortune on different runners, all the long distance runners, and I trialled that out, and that didn't help. And so I did a bit of research on the internet and found Yannis Kouros and tried to run like he did, like a duck with my knees out and my toes pointing out. And that looked kind of silly, didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And then I found that Dean Canassa, so I tried the barefoot, and then I worked out myself that, well, geez, when my legs get tired, I bring the legs through really low on the follow through, and keep my arms a bit lower, and that's a bit more efficient. That the old Cliff Young shuffle. So yeah, so it was a bit of a learning experience, and I got a real kick out of kind of learning that as I went, and as I got, like I said, when you run 70K, and then I'd have breakfast with my mates, and I'd have to work that afternoon, so I'd be on my feet for another 3-4 hours. So you kind of think, oh, geez, I'm doing all right. Middle-aged now, I'm running 70K, and
bloody hell.
I got a kick out of doing that stuff. But I said when the alarm went off at 3 a.m, I wasn't keen to get out of bed. It was the thought, just like any person, the thoughts are, geez, I could easily forget the alarm went off and go back to sleep.
It's funny though, when that happens, right? It's funny how the human brain does that to you and really challenges you, and then you get 5 to 10K into your run, and you're feeling on top of the world, and it's like, how is that person in bed? It's a complete.
For me, it was until I turned to come back, so I was probably 35.
yeah, 30. Yeah, but for my 5K is your 50, and this is what I wanted to ask you, because I'm actually trying to take my running just to like a longer distance, more purely because I'm not really training for anything, but more just the mental side of I've always had this ceiling on how far I can run, like a 10K, that's a maximum, and then I actually did 21K the other month, and it was like, my plan was to do like 15, 16K, and I'm like, well, if I keep going here, I'm 5K off like half a marathon. That's a big milestone for me. But
that's fair.
For the average person, right, like myself, who running distances have these like mental barriers without realizing on their distance of running, like, is there any, like, if you were our coach, for example, what advice would you be giving us to break that shackle of the barrier that we've set ourselves?
I think the key is trying to switch your brain off with this kind of stuff. Where the more you think, the more you psych yourself out. So, and when you do have a hard crew, that's when you got to try and chill out. I had the music going and try and think happy thoughts. But like I said, I've had some bad experiences during endurance events where like an English Channel and things like that, where things haven't gone well. You get injuries and things. So it doesn't always pan out. But I think for endurance sports, if you that famous saying, "You're in your zone," whatever that means, but just switching your brain off and trying to get in the rhythm and listen to your body and smell the fresh air and just try and get a rhythm and just keep going. And often, 5-10 minutes later, you come good again.
Yeah. So it's like controlling that internal noise a little bit and just you simplify the whole process by just like almost like trying to be present, like get in this flow state of this is where
exactly.
You're just staying exactly in the moment.
I think it's kind of like, if you're really hungry and you put food in the microwave for 2 minutes and you're waiting there, it feels like half an hour. We're brain off, what's 2 minutes?
Yeah.
That's all relative to your mindset at the time. So, like I said, I've had moments where a lot of times I've stuffed up and I haven't done that. But when things are going well, it's generally you're chilling out in your head and you're just in the zone and just, off you go.
So is that your technique, I guess, to remaining calm and positive in some of these long distance events or ultra triathlons when you're not feeling great or shit's hitting the fan? Like, for instance, the swim you did in the English Channel, I defy anyone, the average person, to be able to swim a kilometre in that, because I think you say it in the documentary, but you're swimming freestyle and the way you swim, like it looks like you just crunch the water, like you're just eating water, just smashing through. But the tide was so rough that day that literally your left arm was in the water and your right leg was in the air and your body's at right angles and left angles. And is that how do you control how your brain's functioning in a moment of panic that what you can't control is being thrown at you?
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, I had a real baby moment during that too. I was, the start, we had wind against tide, so it was really awkward chop. So it's some bigger waves, but it was just awkward because the water was all over the place. So I couldn't get a body position. So you feel like somebody's grabbing you and ragdolling you. So my brain was getting, the small brain I've got was getting, ragdolled around. I couldn't get a rhythm. And 2 hours in, I said to the boatman, who I told you I've got a good history with. I've done I did a single crossing with him, a double crossing with him. He was there when I got pulled out of the water for my first failed attempt. I was hoping to get a bit of love from him. He goes, is this going to get any better? He goes, I thought you were a swimmer. Swim! So I thought, fair enough. I've been a bit of a baby. So I got going again. And I came good. And then the wind died down in the second half, so it wasn't as bad. But the first kind of 4 or 5 hours was real half a metre, 1 metre waves, but real awkward waves, just all over the shop. So I couldn't get my body in a stable position where often when it's rough you can smash through the waves, but then you get a nice bit for 2 or 3 seconds. This was constantly, my body was on all different angles. And I was against a massive tide. So when you see my GPS later, it's a huge S. So I end up swimming there for 4K, and that's purely because we're on a big spring tide, and I was just unlucky to have the big headwinds against the tide.
Yeah. There's also a moment in that where I think it's not that you're struggling with your swim. The tide's pretty tough, but I think they talk about Tammy messaged someone on the boat to say, give him like some hot water, and you pull over near the boat and they give you like some Ribena, or they give you like a hot bottle, and you put that in your body because the water that long in any form of cold water, you must be close to battling like hypothermia or some sort of ridiculous as you experienced when you were 19. But is your body are you close to experience hypothermia, one, and then secondary, when you were drinking that hot water, it seemed to improve your swim?
The arch is different. If you're just doing English Channel swim, you can't wear a wetsuit, so you've got to get fat. For this swim, because it's a triathlon, you can wear a wetsuit. So I didn't have to get as fat as I would if I was just doing a channel. So the wetsuit's a huge advantage. But because I was obviously exhausted from doing the run, and you've only had limited rest, and you're swimming against awkward chop, it takes it out of you. So the energy that you have just to move forwards and to fight the cold is reduced. And so I wasn't cold initially, but probably halfway into it, the cold started creeping in, which on paper you wouldn't think it would because you got a suit on. Even though I was skinnier than when I did my double crossing, I still had a suit on. So, but yeah, because you're lower in energy from the run, and it was terrible conditions, that energy you normally use to keep warm as well. So it kind of starts creeping in.
Yeah.
And, once you get cold, you never get warm again. It gets worse. It's like Chinese torture. What gets you warm is how fat you are and how much intensity you're swimming at because you're generating heat. So
warm the body.
Get hot, slow down, you're not generating as much heat. It's a bit like if you get up in the morning and it's 2 degrees, you'll get warm if you start running, but if you're walking, you need more clothes.
Yeah.
So same thing with swimming. So every athlete has to work out how fat they want to get to take on the channel, bearing in mind that this you get the advantage of a wetsuit. But if you're doing a solo swim, the slower you swim, the fatter you're gonna have to get because you're gonna be in the water longer.
Right.
So I did start getting cold and tired, and then, like I said, I missed the point of Cape Grenade, the closest tip of France, because the tide was so big.
Yeah.
And I was swimming on this. I was barely moving in the last 400 metres against the tide. I was sprinting, and that really knocked me about because any bit of energy I had left, I basically the hardest half an hour I could do just to get in to get to the rocks, and that really sucked all my energy out. And that's why when I got back in the boat and the second crew come pick me up, I looked like I was dying.
Yeah, I don't know how.
I wasn't as bad as I looked. I was just very low on energy, and I just had enough. I was just trying to use enough energy to get back to the hotel and have a nap.
Yeah. So when there's a few questions. I put out a thing yesterday on Instagram, on the Unlaced podcast Instagram, just for some of the listeners. I said we're getting an ultra triathlete on today. What are some of the things you want to ask? And we did get a few questions in. One of them's kind of funny, but I don't know if you know this person. But one of them was, have you heard of David Goggins? Do you know who that is?
Oh, that's the I've seen him on the YouTube. He does all ultras. Yeah,
correct. Well, and I think the reason why they've asked me this, and this is actually one of the things I'm going to say about this episode, but you are David Goggins before David Goggins. Like the whole mentality of what he does. The only thing that maybe he does different is he puts it on YouTube and just screams at the camera and calls everyone, weak as anything.
Oh,
Whereas you do it a bit more silently.
Believe it or not.
You seem like a pretty firm character like him, where nothing's going to stop you, and you're owning your mind, which is owning your physical activity, which is pretty. Oh, no, I wouldn't go that far.
I've had a lot of DNFs and injuries, and it's a roller coaster. Yeah, you remember see the good results, but there's a lot of times where I've had stuff ups, and if you're doing something big, you can have a lot of failures, and then you learn from your experiences, and you try and get rid of what stopped you, and you try and get bigger and better and stronger, but it's been a real roller coaster, and so that's the beauty of endurance sports. It's kind of like a metaphor of life. You never know what's around the corner.
Yeah,
it can be good, and then all of a sudden you get a punch in the head. You say, "Where'd that come from?" It's put into the Archer's cage, 61 hours of a roller coaster of emotions. In life, you can have 5 good years, and all of a sudden something happens, and oh, geez, how did that happen? I lost my job or something like that. So I always look at the endurance sports. It's a real roller coaster, but in a compacted event.
Yeah, that's pretty inspiring to hear, Johnny. Just want to go through a couple of these questions, but some of them are quite funny. But one was, do you get bored when you train?
I do, yeah. It's funny because like I was telling you, some of my training sessions, I was training as much as I could. I was doing basically 4 things a day. I was doing weights, the barefoot running, swimming, cycling, and it's just all consuming. And then I'd be working morning and night, so they were massive days. So I'd be exhausted. And the Saturday I'd just do run 70k run. So a lot of the times you're just trying to get through the day. I'd start off, say, with my barefoot run, or I'd start off with a gym and then go straight to Denny Park, then my barefoot run. And it's human nature to be running, thinking, geez, now I've got to go on, after this I've got to go swim 6K, at the pool.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's a mental test just to get through a normal day and just keep accumulating the training.
Can you take us through like one of what a normal day is for you, like right now, or maybe when you're training, just for context of how intense it can be?
Oh, I'm all or nothing. So at the moment I'm swimming twice a day in the bay, and I'm just doing a few weights in the middle of the day and push-ups and things.
That's nothing, just to clarify.
Yeah, I was swimming in the bay.
So 3 sessions a day is just
yeah, that's enjoyable. That's like
right.
I'm probably doing 5K 5 days a week, But for the arch, once I got going, I was doing 4 things a day. Except the Sunday was my long swim day, so I generally do a 12K pool set. I do 120 hundreds in the pool, and then I'd go to the gym after and jump on the bike and do a few weights. The Saturday was my big run day, so it'd be a 70K run, but I wouldn't do anything else. I'd just have to work in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But then Monday to Friday, I would do my barefoot run. I would do my weights. I would do my bike. I'd do my swim, which was generally a 6K swim. So it became a challenge just to turn up, and every day was epic. So I'd be real tired. You get over it. Like you wouldn't want to talk about it. I'd get home, I wouldn't want to talk about my training. I just want to switch my brain off and watch telly and else. And so it gets too much. So, and it's funny because when I don't have a goal, I would go to the pool. I struggle to swim 2K.
Yeah.
After the arch, because I got a group of mates I'd go to the pool with and have a coffee swim. And when I got back from the arch, it was quite a few months later because I was pretty exhausted, and I'd have my casual swim with my mates, and they'd say, okay, let's do 2K, and I'd end up getting out after 1K because I was bored.
Yeah.
So person that 3 months earlier was doing 6Ks plus the running and cycling and weights, and then 12K swim on a Sunday struggles to do 2K. So,
but it's interesting for me because I can relate to what you say there, because there's been periods where I trained super hard, I feel, and there's periods where I'm just completely polar opposite and I feel like I'm lazy, and I'm like, how's there 2 different people? But the one thing that I've realized when I analyze that is that when I'm going hard at something, it's because I've attached it to a goal or an outcome that I'm going for. And when I don't have something to go for, it's like, well, what's the point? Do you think that's pretty important with endurance training or just training in general? If there's not something, it's not a carrot at the end, is it harder for you to get the most out of yourself, like you said?
Oh, for me, it is, especially at my age, because when I was young, you're a different person when you're young. You're trying to take on the world. You haven't achieved yet, so you're full of beans. As I've got older, I need a goal now. I need something to get me excited. If I don't, I struggle. So in my weight, like I've just lost some weight again, but I put on 8 kilos during the first coronavirus lockdown.
It's impressive, mate.
Yeah, I actually did a swim race in Williamstown in winter, and I saw the photos of me running out of the water. I thought, geez, I got to start losing.
Yeah.
Boy, that middle-aged man running out the beach.
That's actually one of the questions from the listeners, and this is a bit about nutrition, but in particular, and this is from Matt Christodoulou, my mate. Shout out, Matty. But who's taken up, he's running quite seriously, but he asked here, what's your race day nutrition? Like how do you, because it's all race days, because some of your events go over 3 days.
Yeah, for the actual arch to arc, I've actually got these bars here. I'll show you.
Yeah, please do. The great man, John Van Wisse. I've seen you eating healthy oats, and ending up in Macca's, eating a Macca's meal. But
these are called access bars.
Access bars, okay.
Yeah, so you have to have them on an empty stomach, and it's the amount in the loading of each ingredient which helps turn your fat. Helps you utilise your body fat. So the theory is you burn your body fat, but you can't have any. You have to have it with water, can't have any calories, but you have to have it on an empty stomach. So we first found that they were called cold buster bars back in the early 90s. And there was a show on Channel 10 called, what was it called? Something to the Future. It was about, we saw these Canadian armed forces on these cold buster bars, and they were in a freezer on a bike eating these cold buster bars. So they'll put in the Canadian Armed Forces as a survival bar to help you shiver longer. So we thought that'd be really good for the English Channel. So we contacted Channel 10, that TV show. It was called Beyond 2000. That was
right.
This is and we became friends with Dr. Yang, who invented the bars, and he sponsored us and gave us bars. And then it turned out that if you keep eating them, you lose weight because it helps you use your body fat. And I stopped using them after the channel, but my sister kept using them, and they sponsored her. And then since then, they've relabeled them the Access Bar, and they use it for all sports now because it helps you use your body fat. So when I did the Arch, I did the first probably 70, 80K on water and just the Access bars. But then after that, I went onto natural food like sandwiches. I had a pizza at the end, right at the end. The funny story, because I was craving a pizza, and Johnny Locko, who's the main man of my crew, he went ahead into Dover, and the pizza shop was just closing, and he said, "Oh, look, I've got this crazy guy, running from London. Can you get a pizza?" And the guy especially reopened up for us and made us a pizza, and didn't charge us, and he became friends on social media with us. He started following the event on the social media, so I had that pizza, and that was magnificent. Then in the morning before the swim, I had scrambled eggs, and then when I did the bike, I was a mess. And Edgar Edgy, the guy who runs the event, said whoever gets to this McDonald's, which is about 60k into the event, always stops and has Maccas because they're exhausted. So I ended up doing that too. And I stopped at the Maccas, and I had Sundays and Big Mac. I can't remember what I had. I was craving junk food because I was
salt. You needed salt, didn't you?
I needed salt and sugar. I needed fat. I needed any calories. I was just stuffed. And the rest of the bike ride, the crew would go ahead and get McDonald's and bring it back to me. So I probably had maybe 4 times I had McDonald's during the 290k ride, where the crew would get the second, because we had 2 cars, so the second crew would go to a McDonald's. They would work out where one is and come back and bring me McDonald's, because I was just craving food. And I remember when I got back, I was 8 kilos lighter than when I left, and so my body just kept eating itself even when I finished the event. I was it would become life and death. So I was just craving calories. But so what's the magical diet? I don't know. But Edgar always says that everyone who has a diet plan, like a sports drink or special bars, approximately 80k into the run, they just say, "Can you go get me some hot chips?"
Yeah, it goes out the window.
So I don't know with the science. I'm mixed on that. Whatever you can stomach.
Yeah,
I find after a while, if I have sports drinks, and so I tend to have more real food. But at the start of the run, I had those Access bars for the first half of the run, just on water and an empty stomach, just have the bars, and then after that, I got onto real food. But yeah, so I don't have a real answer for that. It's just trial and error, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. Everything doesn't work, So
that's pretty crazy, and I can imagine there'd be the body cravings would overtake the rational thinking before the start of the race at some point. But I guess just to kind of round out the podcast and the conversation with Johnny Van Wisse, who, if you've been listening right now, you're probably ready to run through a wall or really questioning your own exercise cycle of, what you're doing from a distance point of view, because Johnny's just going to lengths that the average human can't and mentally doesn't even want to know about. But for you, what's next now after you've done so much and all these achievements? Like, what more do you want to achieve that's not there?
I still want another crack at the Arch, Jake. So I was going to go last year, but I hurt my Achilles, and I overtrained. I was in really good shape. I was doing my barefoot running, and I was doing the distance of the arch in a week. So I was running approximately 140k a week, riding 300k a week, and swimming about 40k a week. And then I was 7 weeks out, and I thought, I'm going to step it up. So I did an extra 40k in that week, most of it barefoot. Then I got a slight tear in my Achilles, and I already had the Achilles tendonitis in both Achilles, so I was already, struggling to get through the training. And if I was coaching somebody, I wouldn't advise to do that, because you're emotionally involved myself. I stupidly kept it up, and then I did 6 weeks of water running, thinking I'm still going to go. And then my swimming squads, there's a lovely lady, Claire, who was going to take my swim squads while I was away. She saw me still limping. She goes, just get an MRI. And this is, a week before I was supposed to go. She got the MRI, got it sent to a physio, and the physio said, it's all good. So I thought, fantastic. So I tried to run the next day. I couldn't run still. I was hobbling that night at squad. I was like, oh, God, maybe it's in the head. I'm mentally weak. Got sent the scan off to a friend who's a surgeon, and he said, no, it's terrible, don't go. Then I got the actual report back from the MRI people, and said, you've got a little tear in your Achilles, you've got tendonitis, you've got a crack in your heels. Not good. So I had to make a decision, because, I'd spent all this money. I was the first time ever I was going business class. The accommodation was like $5,000. The entry for the event's about $10,000. So I'd laid out all this money, I'd invested all this training. So it was Friday, and I was booked to leave on Sunday. So I put heel raisers in the back of my shoes. I strapped up my Achilles. I got on Nurofen. I tried running around the block, and I struggled to run 5K, and I thought, I've got no chance of breaking any records. So I had to pull the pin on the event. So it's a real roller coaster. So I want to go back and get my body right, but it's 10 months. It's a year later now. I've still got the Achilles tendonitis, so right. I'm trying to work. I'm not running at the moment. I tried running again, and I was still sore, so I couldn't get a window for next year's Arch because of the coronavirus and the Brexit. So I'm trying to get a window for 2022, but my goal in the next 6 months is to try and get my tendons strong in both Achilles and make them bulletproof and get rid of the tendonitis. And don't make the mistake I did. If I can get a window again, don't overtrain. Be happy. If things are going well, just leave it alone. Don't get stupid. Yeah. And I actually, with this coronavirus, I feel like regenerated again. So I feel like I want to really have a crack again.
That is a frightening thought, to think that if you're regenerated, I'm scared to hear what's going to come next, or excited, I should say. And I definitely want to get on, hopefully, those tendons sorted, because I do want to come on a run with you and see how long I last with a great man. But it would be inspiring to train with you one day, for sure. That'd be a goal of mine. So, mate, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been an absolute joy, Johnny. And your story needs to be heard. And as I said earlier, for those that want to know more about Johnny, actually watch the Enduroman event that he did in 2014, where he had the world record, and by no means was it an easy conditions to do so. It's on YouTube, and it's called Crossing the Line, John Van Wisse. And you can watch the whole documentary on there. It goes for about an hour, but it's an hour well spent. So,
thanks, Jake. Yeah, Dad.
Hey, that's right, mate. No, but thanks again, Johnny. We'll definitely have you on in due course, and I'll hopefully can share some stories of me running and training with you in the future, and share people with how hard it is.
Thanks, Jake.
No worries, mate. Cheers.